Hopefully, after they do the introductions, I'll come back and shift the PowerPoint. Stay in your space as you come.
All right.
I'm gonna, we don't unfortunately have water bottles, but I'll grab a glass for you.
Oh, thank you. It's all good. This is more environmental. Oh, yeah. Like that for it.
Yes. Good afternoon. Good afternoon. Hello, good afternoon. Hello? Test. The test worked about 5 minutes ago. Test. Test. Testing. So if you're used to coming to Friday Forum Conversation Cafe, you know we start at 12:05. You can know each repeat by saying it's a good time to talk, so we will start at about. Again, good afternoon. As is often the case, the line continues to gather, as we are getting here, looking for time to get started. It's just after 12:05. My name is Ann Rasmussen. I'm Associate Director here at the University of YMCA. I'm very happy to welcome you to the Friday Forum, which again is, about your headquarters academic year has been partnered with diversity and social justice education, which we're very about it. I did a couple of quick housekeeping announcements, and then I'm gonna pass it to a good friend and board member here in the line, Stacey Robinson, who will introduce the speaker, who is Kofi Bazzell-Smith. So again, welcome here to the line. We hope you're enjoying a little bit of lunch. That's a big part, and then very soon for the wild time food. Food is great, and we're happy to have you here and taste testing it. The eatery is open extended hours now this year. They're opening 10:30 a.m. until 3:30 p.m. So there's a nice long time to go back 5 days a week. So we are grateful to the several sponsors who helped us support this series. And this week I'm actually going to read them off from the head list here in front of me. We're grateful to the Center for Advanced Studies, the Center for Global Studies, and the U.S. Department of Education Title V grant, the College of Education, the Center for Innovation in Teaching and Learning, the Department of African American Studies, the Humanities Research Institute, the Office of the Provost, the School of Social Work, the Social Action Council of the Unitarian Universalist Church of the YMCA, and the Women and Gender in Global Perspectives program. And in addition, as I mentioned, first, the Office of Diversity and Social Justice Education here at UOI. We're also grateful to our partners who help make the process of these days possible and extend our information upward. Web radio is here, and our band public television is here. So again, thank you for being here. Welcome to the live, welcome to this series. It's a series of many good presentations throughout the season. I'm going to invite you particularly to come back next week as a lead up to Pride. Dementia Paul and Carlton Cummings will be here talking about We Are Here, cultivating belonging for our peer students of color at Illinois. So that should be a really good talk. Stacey Robinson. Stacey is professor here in the College of Art Design, graduate program, and a board member here at the YMCA. Does lots of things that are big difference, participation in many things. Today is to this year.
All right, good officially afternoon. Good afternoon. Before I introduce one of my favorite people, one of my best friends, I can actually say that, Kofi, I was given an opportunity. I want to invite you all to our faculty exhibition, which opens tomorrow. It's a Black faculty exhibition. We're celebrating the wonderful opportunity we have out of the history of the School of Art and Design. We've had 8 Black faculty, and 5 of us are here now. And it's an amazing opportunity for us to look at and celebrate all of us, but there are 4 of us exhibiting work that opens tomorrow. The show is called Black on Black on Black on Black. And you can check it out at the Cranberry, right? You got that, right? You can check out the information at the Cranberry Art Museum website. Full day of events happening beginning at 10 a.m. tomorrow if you signed up or RSVP'd for the VIP tour. And if you did, I think you can still come but unofficially, I did not tell you just to show up and come, right? But please, if you don't come, we start at noon. There is a lot of free food. There are food trucks. There are amazing opportunities to have a whole lot of fun, and all of it is very family friendly too. So just wanted to invite you out to that. Thank you very much for coming out to the exhibition. If not, it is open through December, so beginning of December. So you'll have plenty of opportunity to check it out. All right, thank you. All right, so Kofi, oh my goodness, I love Kofi. Kofi is a second-year MFA candidate and in new media at YUC, and a Mellon Foundation Interseminars Initiative Fellow with the Humanities Research Institute. He is also a professional boxer and former Golden Gloves champion. I just learned that last night. All right. Having studied under professionals in Japan several times, Kofi works in Japanese manga and writes stories in both English and Japanese. His goals are to publish manga in Japan, to introduce manga practice as an academic discipline in the United States, and to use art, language, and sports to build international bridges. Like I said, Kofi is one of my favorite people in the world. I'm so glad he has decided to give us 3 more years. He was ready to leave Champaign-Urbana. He was born and raised here. He said, I want to go see the world. And he's actually been seeing the world and still staying here to give us 3 years in our MFA program. And just wanted to introduce Kofi. Yeah, Kofi Bazzell-Smith. All right.
Should I hold this?
I just turned that off. Yeah.
I'll just project. I don't hear you there. Okay, I can talk loud. I can talk loud. Thanks, Stacy. Hi, everybody. Thank you for coming. I have a lot of slides in my presentation. I'm just gonna sort of speak extemporaneously. So as things come up, if you come up with some ideas for questions, I do want to try to leave enough time for that. So I'm going to run through these things, but I'm going to be using the word manga a lot. Show of hands, is there anybody who doesn't know what that is? So I can get you up to speed. Okay, manga is the Japanese form of comic books, right? It's a very specific sort of cultural form of comics. And I'll talk about that a little bit. I'll talk about my process so you get an idea a little bit more of what that is. If you ever heard of anime, like those really famous Japanese cartoons, before it's an anime, it's a manga, basically. Usually like a mangaka, somebody who creates a manga, will make a manga, it gets really popular, and an animation company will turn it into an anime. So the whole reason I started this research and I have like this exhibition and stuff right now is because I was just a kid who grew up watching anime on TV. So I just decided to sort of stick with it. So Stacy introduced me already. My name's Kofi. I'm an MFA candidate in new media. I'm an artist. I draw manga. I'm also a boxer. And I have sort of a non-traditional background when it comes to getting into academia. Sort of found myself here all of a sudden, but I want to talk a little bit about my background just to color my experience a little bit. So my manga that's out there, Azuki, it's about rock, paper, scissors, if it were taken seriously as a martial art. So martial arts is really important to me. Most of my life, my earliest memories have been in the Kung Fu school. So this is like sort of where I come from. My father actually is 4th degree black belt now in Shaolin Kung Fu. So I was raised by sort of a Kung Fu master studying. I've also always been a huge nerd, love Japanese video games, love anime, love manga. So when I grew up, I dropped out of school. I was a dropout for like over 10 years, just sort of doing the things that I wanted to do. I became a boxer, so still a huge nerd, but also punching people. So I'll just show you some images of sort of like what my life has been like for the past 13 years now. Just sort of as I'm casually taking courses in community college, this has sort of been the main focus of my adult life. So yeah, it's pretty, I suppose, untypical for like I guess I can call myself a scholar now. That's still a weird term for me to use. I'm a professional now. I've been a professional for a little over a year. So this is like what most of my life is like. I'm like half and half in the academy and at the gym and fighting. This was my last fight from just 3 months ago in June, where I broke my nose. I won the fight though. But yeah, it's sort of like it's a totally different environment and atmosphere where I'm usually. So this is usually what my day-to-day looks like with my team. But now all of a sudden I'm this scholar. So now I'm doing this fellowship with the Humanities Research Institute. It's called the Inter-Seminars Initiative. It's a Mellon Foundation scholarship. Basically what it is, it's all these different graduate students from around campus. We're all from completely different disciplines, and we're coming together to do this interdisciplinary fellowship. And the idea is we're supposed to create something after 18 months. So I'm the visual artist. We have a dancer. We've got a lawyer who's, we get people from all over. So it's really interesting. And I think sort of the reason I got the fellowship and why I'm interested in it is I want to teach manga, which, like I said before, it's specifically a Japanese medium. It's not just comics. I don't think the form can be divorced from sort of its cultural history and context. So it's art, it's storytelling, it's Japanese studies, it's Japanese language. It's inherently interdisciplinary. And sort of the reason why interdisciplinarity is important and sort of a buzzword right now is the way our academy is structured. Everything is so divided and everything is so separate. And I think, and we think, that's not really a natural way to sort of like absorb knowledge and teach. So we're interested in finding connections. And I think manga itself has to be sort of, in order to teach it, in order to learn it, you're learning about Japan, you're learning Japanese language, you're learning how to draw, you're learning how to write. So that's sort of my take on that. And I also want to teach it. So we're basically just doing like a bunch of brainstorming sessions for 3 hours every Wednesday, trying to come up with something. And this is sort of what I have to add to it, is sort of the drawing storytelling aspect. I want to introduce a little bit about my research and sort of the background, why I'm so interested in manga and what I think it has to offer. So as it stands now, you cannot learn how to draw manga in the United States. You can't go to any school in the United States and learn how to draw manga. It's still very, very much just taught in Japan, even though it's widely popular. And there's very specifically a huge Black anime, manga, and Japanese video game fandom in the United States. These are some cosplayers. And I noticed there's a lot of other people like me, a lot of other Black kids who grew up wanting to become mangaka, but not having that sort of access because there's sort of there's a huge barrier because of the Japanese language. You have to get overseas to learn it. But just to give you an example to paint this picture, I'm a part of a Facebook sort of social media group called Black Anime and Manga Artists. And there's over 13,000 people in the group. So there's a lot of us. But I'm seeing sort of like missed opportunities to really fully engage with the country and the culture because of the language barrier. So I'm trying to do what I can to fix that. And I'll talk a little bit more about that. This is a huge convention called DreamCon. You can see the Japanese character Yume for Dream right there. And if any of you guys recognize that cloud, that's a Dragon Ball reference, which is an ancient, adapted from an ancient Chinese story. But anyway, this is like a huge Black anime, manga, Japanese video game fandom convention. So there's something there. There's a huge Black manga movement. I'm not the only one doing this. Black anime and manga movement. And another thing that I think that's related to this is Black music is really popular in Japan. Black music is very popular in Japan, from jazz to blues to hip hop. And there's this whole community that's formed. And I'm sort of interested in the intersection between these two communities, how we can sort of promote global exchange and international connections through popular media, right? So being an academic and a scholar is important, but I think these are more accessible forms. Everybody can understand music, everybody can understand comics. So I think it's a scholarly venture to try to stay sort of accessible and explore international connections through these things that everybody is having fun participating in. So how I want to sort of contribute to this community and to this goal, I worked really hard. I learned Japanese. The first time I went to Japan, I just quit my job and flew myself there. I was a dropout. So I've been going to Japan a few times now. I'm a US Japan Bridging Scholar now, and sort of I'm trying to use art and language and sports and just meeting a lot of people to sort of build these connections. Let's go through some of the images. Boxing has been a really important part of sort of my Japanese adventures. Actually, I learned most of my Japanese in boxing gyms, not in the classroom, because nobody speaks English. And it's sort of like, you know, if you're studying a foreign language and you learn in the classroom, it's very textbook, but you realize when you actually go to that country, nobody actually talks like that. So yeah, it was like a rude awakening the first time that I went to Japan. So a lot of my experience there has been in sports and been in studying with mangaka, which is a manga artist. A lot of the things that you learn about a language is sort of on the ground when you go there. Part of this presentation I want to talk about to you all, especially the students, is sort of how to create opportunities for yourself, especially if you want to study abroad. Don't just go to class and then go home and go in the dorm. Most of your greatest experiences will happen sort of like outside in the world, about the connections that you build. So I'm going to talk a little bit about strategy, how to make those connections. And one thing that I'm going to probably repeat a few times is something that an uncle of mine told me that really sticks with me. It's that opportunity comes at the intersection of luck and preparedness. So sometimes opportunity, you just got to be lucky, but you have to be ready. So I'll give you a concrete example. I keep my portfolio with me everywhere. I never know when there's going to be somebody that wants to like check out my artwork. And a lot of opportunities that I'll explain in this talk have been specifically from having my portfolio with me. For example, this one here. So there's a place called the Kyoto International Manga Museum that I visited in Japan when I was studying abroad 3 years ago. It was just like this sort of, if anybody know the term weeaboo, like anime nerd, it was just an event where people are like trading Pokemon cards and dressed up as anime characters, just like a huge nerdy event. But I had my portfolio with me, and every opportunity that I had, I would show my artwork to people to see if I can meet people, just to see if I can make something happen. 70–80% of the time, nothing happens, but that 20 to 30%, something does come up. So I found out there was like a really formal event downstairs. Somebody saw my work and he was like, "Oh, you're really good. You know, there's all of these professional manga editors and publishers downstairs in this event that all came from Tokyo for this one event. It's free for people who want to become professionals. They come from all over the country to sort of submit their work and get live feedback from editors from the top companies in manga in Japan." So I went downstairs and it was this super formal event. Everybody was wearing suits. It was like some people were like making deals to become professionals. I had my work with me and I got to have meetings with some of the top publishers in the world in manga, Shonen Jump with Kodansha and Young King Comics. Because I came prepared, not necessarily because I was good. I think all the artists there actually had better drawings than me, but I had my stuff ready. And a part of me being prepared was being really serious about studying the language so I could communicate with people, because none of these publishers spoke English. So, you know, I had to prepare myself. I keep a dictionary on my phone whenever I'm in conversation with somebody, just in case they say something I don't know. I check them out there, like, hold on a second, can you repeat that? And I'll look it up. That's a part of being prepared and sort of being proactive and learning and engaging. So this turned into a really cool opportunity where I got to get like one-on-one feedback for like over an hour from all these major publishers. And also just talking to people, making friends with people. That's actually the secret to networking. It's just talking to people. So business, relationships, career, a network is just a web of human relationships. So like if you're at an event, if you're at a conference, if you're somewhere like here, like after this, you also talk to each other, talk to people and figure something out. You never know what's going to happen. So there's this school called Kyoto Seikai University, which is the #1 manga research institution in the entire world. I've always been really interested in this school, but I don't have any access to it. I was studying abroad at a school 2 hours away. I started talking to some of the artists that were at this event, just casually exchanging work. "Oh, that looks cool. Can I see your stuff? Can I show you mine?" And I saw this guy, he gave me his card. He had just graduated from Kyoto Seikai University. And this place has been on my list for years. I've tried to email them, they never responded. And I was like, "Oh, I love that place." And he was like, "You want to meet my professor?" Like, yeah, I want to meet your professor. So that led to me developing a relationship with Professor Akira Saso, who's the head of the manga storytelling department at Kyoto Seika. So I made my way in through the back door. While I was studying abroad, he let me audit one of his courses. And every Monday I would meet him in his office. And he sort of trained me and guided me through drawing a boxing manga. And it became a really great experience. He gave me the textbook, their in-house textbook on manga storytelling, which he wrote. And I learned a lot of stuff just by going to an event and being prepared, not being afraid to show people my artwork, even though it wasn't nearly as good as anybody else's. They were all professionals, and talking to people. That's how that happened. Because I tried emailing the school and they never responded. There's always a way through the back door if you talk to people, I think. So I'll show y'all a little bit of my work. We see Azuki out there. Basically what I've been doing is I'm trying to become a professional mangaka. That's really important to me. So far, there's only one person by the name of Kofi Smith from the United States who has entered the professional manga industry in Japan, who's debuted as a professional manga. Only one person ever, and that was in 2012. I'd like to be the next one if I can. If somebody beats me, that's fine, but I want to enter this community. I want to enter this industry. So the way you become a professional mangaka is you create what's called a Yomikiri manga, which is a one-shot manga. It's basically the pilot episode of a television show. So you create the pilot episode, you send it to the company. If they like it, they'll hook you up with an editor, and then you create a serialized version. Serialized means it comes out weekly, it comes out monthly, and manga is published in magazines as collections, as anthologies. Usually in the United States, we get them in a book, what's called a tankobon. The actual format they're usually read in is a series of anthologies, a series of single chapters, weekly and monthly. So I'm making a lot of Yomikiri manga, a lot of short stories with a lot of different themes, and submitting them to publishers. I haven't become professional yet, but it's also a good way to practice. And I think, just as an aside for anybody who wants to tell stories, Stephen King said this, start with short stories because you can practice a lot of ideas. It's one and done. It's good to do short projects to get things done and sort of get the ball rolling. So here's some of my short works, just a lot of different themes. I'm doing some stuff in color. And I'll talk a little bit about my process. And then after that, I want to talk specifically about my most recent research trip to Japan. I just got back a couple of weeks ago. So I wanted to share some images from that as well. So I'll break down my process for creating a page. This is from Azuki. This is what a completed page looks like. So I personally always start with the script. I'm making this in English and Japanese, but this is the first work that I've ever done where I want to try to understand sort of like the Japanese-ness of manga better. So I'm actually writing this in Japanese and then translating it back into English. So I start with the script just to get an idea. It's the same way, like the way screenwriters write something before they give the sort of script and stuff to the director. Screenwriting, there's a lot of like sort of one-to-one transitions between screenwriting and filmmaking and creating manga, cinematography and such. After that, I do thumbnails, which are really small images, so I can sort of get an idea of my compositions. These are what my notes look like as I'm creating a page. This is probably like one of the most important parts. It doesn't look like anything, but this is where I'm making decisions, deciding what looks like what, cutting things out, the editing. You know, when you write a paper, when you're applying for a grant or something like that, people say most of the work is in the editing. The same thing is true for drawing and designing comics and manga. So this is a really important phase. Next is what's called the name. This is a manga term, which basically means the rough draft. This is the most important part of manga. It doesn't look like much. It's just a rough draft of what the pages look like. So professional mangaka, they work really closely with editors. This is the part that they actually submit to the editor for approval, the rough draft. They work with the editor, they get changes, and then once they get a solid name done, then they start on their manuscript draft, which is called a Genko Yoshi, manuscript paper. So I use manga paper, which has like very specific dimensions for printing. So after I do the name, which is just like on a small sheet of paper, scratch paper, again, this is very important. I know what the composition looks like. Every time I draw an image or a page, I've drawn each one of the images 3, 4, 5, 6 times. So I know exactly what it looks like. And this is sort of the automatic process when you make sort of the final manuscript draft. After the manuscript draft, I use various inking tools, such as the G pen, which is a really cool manga tool. It's a dip pen, and it's made of these 2 blades that are stuck together. But after you dip the ink, what's interesting is as you apply pressure, the blades separate and your line can get wider. So you can vary sort of line width and get really beautiful complex lines on a single stroke based on how you apply pressure. That's a G pen. That's sort of a really important manga tool. So I ink my work using G pen and micron pens and brushes and stuff. And then I scan it in to do digital edits using a program called Clip Studio, which is basically the Photoshop that was built specifically for manga artists, for manga. It's got a lot of really specific tools, such as tones. These gray patterns here are actually what's called halftone dots. If you zoom in, it's actually just black and white. So it's a bunch of black dots with varying distances from each other. So it's really cheap to print manga because technically it's all black and white. Even these grays here, if you zoom in, it's just a bunch of little tiny black dots. So I take a lot of the stuff that I've learned in Japan and sort of figured out on my own, and I teach. This is a workshop that I did actually here last year. We have another one coming up. It's free, October 8th, Saturday from 1 to 3 p.m. You should come, invite all your friends. It's free. I'm gonna break down specifically what separates manga from Western comics, such as the 4-arc storytelling structure. I'm gonna teach some basics of drawing, and we're all gonna create our own short comics. It's gonna be a 2-hour workshop. It's completely free, Saturday, October 8th from 1 to 3 p.m. So in between going back and forth to Japan to learn more, I teach workshops. This is one I just did in Atlanta in July before I went to Japan in August. And this was at my reception last night. I really can't help teaching. So if somebody shows me their work, I'll break out my stuff and we'll start a little lesson. So now I'm going to talk about my summer research trip really quick. So again, I talked about opportunity comes at the intersection of luck and preparedness. So I want to introduce this mangaka here named Kazuo Maekawa, who's a 25-year professional mangaka. He made a work called Gyakuten Saiban, which some of you may recognize the English title, Phoenix Wright Ace Attorney. This is a really, really famous video game. Yeah, he made the manga for it. So this was sort of the guy that I researched under when I was in Japan. I had never met him in real life. I found him on Facebook and I added him and I struck up conversations with him saying that I was interested in manga. So I started a dialogue. I was really proactive about it. And the current fellowship that I'm in, the HRI Interdisciplinary Fellowship, they said that we have some research funds. If we have some kind of research, it can include travel. So I put 2 and 2 together. I really want to go to Japan. So I said, could I use this for international travel to Japan? They said, yeah, as long as we have sort of a guarantor that you can study under. So I sent Mr. Maekawa a Facebook message and I said, can I please study under you? And he said, yeah. And that's how I got to Japan. So like being proactive, and part of the preparedness that I'm talking about is I had established at least just an online relationship with him. I'm on his radar 6 months before this super lucky opportunity came up. But I had somebody to go research under already because I built a connection through Facebook. Social media is a wonderful tool. So Mr. Maekawa is known for creating Gyakuten Saiban, Phoenix Wright, but he's also known for winning what's called the Tetsuya Chiba Manga Award, which is this really prestigious award. And the day after I landed, he introduced me to Tetsuya Chiba. So this is like one of the most famous mangaka of all time. He made the most famous boxing manga of all time back in the 60s. Called Ashita no Joe, Tomorrow's Joe. Just to give you an example, even people in Japan who don't read manga or watch anime, they know this work, and he's been knighted by the Japanese government sort of for his efforts. He's the president of Bunsei University, and because of this connection that I created, just because of being proactive, I was able to have a meeting with him and his staff, and that's Mr. Maekawa on the left, about how we can sort of use manga, this global form, to create international connections. And right now we have a few things in the works. They sent me, Professor Chiba sent me a lot of the work of his students. So I'm going to hang it up here so they can have like their first international exhibition. And I'm working on trying to create some exchange opportunities with Bunsei University for any administration that's here. Holla at your boy, trying to get some stuff started, you know. So it was really cool. I got to meet like one of the most famous mangaka of all time, who's like your favorite mangaka's favorite mangaka, just because I reached out to this guy on Facebook and he happened to know people, which creates new connections. I came with a plan. I came with a presentation about how I can sort of introduce manga to the United States. So I came prepared. I didn't know what was going to happen. I didn't know who I was going to meet. But each one of these meetings, because I came prepared with these presentations that I spent hours and hours on, like none of these people speak English. So I had to create these Japanese presentations, and this is my second language I'm still learning. So it was really difficult, but you also got to put the time in. So I created these presentations and these opportunities, meeting these people, taking pictures, which is an example of what I would call showing precedence. When you have pictures to show people, people like pictures. Always take pictures of your events. Because I had this picture, I got to meet more people. Because I met this person, I got to meet more people. So I'm going to go through that a little bit. So I got to meet another editor from Kodansha, which is the biggest publishing company in Japan. This was Mr. Maekawa's old publisher from about 15 years ago. So he gave me a tour of the facility. He gave me a bunch of books. Some of the most famous manga come from here. If anybody knows Akira, a lot of other ones. I got to hang out with this editor. We sang some anime songs and karaoke, and we got close. And now he's giving me feedback on my work. So now every time that I complete a work, I can email it to him, and I'm going to get feedback from an actual professional editor. Just about being like making friends with people and meeting people and asking questions. So meeting Professor Chiba, meeting Mr. Maekawa, meeting this editor led to me, especially this image right here helped a lot, led to me, and I asked somebody to take the picture, by the way. Again, being proactive. I asked somebody who was in the room, can you take a picture of us talking? And now this picture has been really helpful for me. I'm going to introduce this school. It's called Nihon Manga Juku. So this is the #1 manga school in the country, so in the world. So manga is usually taught at vocational schools, at technical schools, right? So we have a lot of like 1 to 2 to 3 year technical schools here in the United States. These are private art schools. It's not usually in the academy. So this is the #1 manga school. So because I had that picture with Professor Chiba and Mr. Maekawa, has some contacts, he contacted them, and I was able to meet staff at basically the #1 manga school in the world. Just to give you an example, this is one of their professors who's currently a serialized mangaka. This library that they have in the back, it spans like super far, like way past this picture. All of those books are were made by graduates from the school. So if they it's like a direct pipeline. They're pumping out sort of industry creators. It's really awesome. It's a really good school. But in order to prepare, I decided, so I'm taking this interdisciplinary fellowship, right? School already started. I'm still in Japan, so I'm getting up at like 4:30 in the morning to take class on Zoom with my interdisciplinary fellowship. I'm learning all these new things about interdisciplinarity. So I decided to take what I learned, synthesize that information, translate it into Japanese. So before I go to Nihon Manga Juku, probably spent like 12 hours total creating this presentation on my research in interdisciplinarity, which I'm literally just now learning in my class at the same time, learning all this new information. Then I go give a lecture on it in Japanese. I found out the way you say interdisciplinarity is gakusai. So I learned a bunch of stuff, and I sort of created a presentation. I added to my presentation that I had at Bunsei University of Arts about this interdisciplinary stuff that I'm learning. I added images like this and like this, and they really liked my work. So I got an audience with them, and I also presented on Afrofuturism. So I created this presentation in Japanese explaining Afrofuturism. For those of you who don't know, basically my understanding of Afrofuturism is what is the future for Black people and how we explore that through various media, through novels, through film, through music, through comics. And I claim that manga is sort of a new iteration of Afrofuturism. What is the future for Black people outside of the United States? How we can expand in this sort of interest in Black music globally, and this interest in Japanese visual art and Black communities. And I think manga, the Black manga movement, is an extension of Afrofuturism. So I explained this to them, and they were super interested in it. So I got to hang out with them. This is at that same place. So here on the right is the founder of the school. To the left of me is the CEO of the school, and then other to the left is one of the teachers who's also sort of a serialized mangaka. So again, being prepared, I came prepared. I worked really hard on that presentation. I added a bunch of new stuff. And again, it's luck and preparedness. So I came prepared, but it happened to be the case that the founder had a really good friend who's this super, super famous scholar who focused specifically on manga and interdisciplinarity. So because I gave that presentation, because I added this new information that I was learning in my fellowship to this presentation, I got to meet Professor Ichiro Takeuchi, who is one of the most famous manga writers of all time. He's a dramatist. He's actually a gambling scholar. He's sold like over 1 million books, and he's specifically sort of like a manga historian, and he writes about the interdisciplinary aspects of manga. So I got to meet him, and he agreed to sort of let me research under him next year, all because I came prepared with this new information. So you never know what's going to come up, but basically go hard, be open, be friends with people. The way that I got really in close with the people at Nihon Manga Juku wasn't just the presentation. I hung out with them, right? We went out a bunch of times. I think that's how you build sort of business connections. That's how you build networking relationships, is you just sort of become friends with people. So this is the founder, Mr. Shimizu. I got to spend a lot of time with him just because we went out drinking and we had a good time. I'm not necessarily the best artist who's constantly working with all these professional mangaka, but I speak English. So none of them speak English. So that's an asset to them. And they're interested in sort of expanding globally. I'm interested in sort of building manga practice in American academia. And he's sort of the serial founder of a bunch of manga schools all around Japan. So we got some stuff that we're working on. I'm not going to talk about here yet, but all of this stuff came up from sending a Facebook message and creating these presentations and staying up really late, trying hard to like translate all this new information that I'm learning in my academic fellowship into Japanese and presenting this information earnestly and being friends with people. That's basically how I got all these. And also the whole time that I was researching last month, I was training at Kyoei Boxing Gym, which is like one of the top boxing gyms in Japan. I had made a connection with a boxing coach last time I was there 3 years ago. So before I left, I sent him a Facebook message. I said, can you hook me up with anybody? And he was like, I happen to know this guy. So I got to train with like some of the best pros in the country, again, from a Facebook message. So use your resources, use social media, reach out to people. The worst thing that they could say is no or ignore you. But like that 20% of the time, stuff happens. So here's a little short video. I'm gonna end soon. I just got to do all this technical work with like at one of the top boxing gyms in Japan. And boxing in Japan and the United States, culturally, it's a lot different. So I got to learn a lot of things that I can sort of add to my game. So this was a really interesting experience. I got to share my culture. I got to learn a lot of really cool Japanese phrases again, because nobody speaks English. So yeah, sort of creating these experiences for yourself, especially when you're traveling abroad, reach out to people. Like you never know what's going to happen. A lot of people want to take care of you if you're a foreigner also. So reach out to people, embarrass yourself, use the language wrong with speaking a lot, and sort of you never know what's going to happen with that. So my current plans, and then I'm going to introduce at the end before we do questions, the last really cool experience I got from being prepared and always keeping my portfolio with me. Mr. Maekawa, I'm applying for grants and emailing departments. I'm trying to find enough funding to actually bring him to U of I next semester. He's already agreed to come here for 2 weeks. So I've got some funding from a few other departments. So any administrators here, holla at your boy. We need some money to bring Mr. Maekawa here. This is going to be sort of unprecedented, bringing a 25-year professional mangaka to the United States, to the University of Illinois, to do a bunch of workshops, do a bunch of intensive workshops. Organize an exhibition with Bunsei University of Arts, where Professor Chiba is the president. I actually have Mr. Maekawa, he sent it home with me. I have his sort of like original manuscripts from Phoenix Wright Ace Attorney sitting in my studio right now. And they just emailed me the digital files of all their students' work. So I want to create sort of, with my students and me and Mr. Maekawa and Bunsei students, this sort of international manga exhibition. I want to host it at U of I. So we're working on that. I want to create an exchange program with Bunsei. They're really open to that. And Nihon Manga Juku is offering free online coursework to U of I students, absolutely free for a month, just because I showed up. So now this is helping U of I students with something, and they're not asking for anything. I'm also still trying to go pro, so I got to draw a lot. So that's what's for me in the future. So before I open up for questions, I want to add one more thing. Like I said, I keep this with me everywhere. I always walk. It's heavy, but I walk around with it everywhere because you never know what's going to happen. So I'm just hanging out in Tokyo just by myself. I'm looking for a Starbucks. So I got this big portfolio with me, and this huge camera is in my face all of a sudden, and I'm being interviewed by Fuji Television, this big national news network. And I showed them my work, and they were interested in what I had to say. So they took me to see the giant Gundam, and they just did, like, I was just on TV in Japan like a week ago, just because I had my stuff with me. They just randomly came up to me on the street. Nothing was planned. So I'm going to show you the clip. I don't have subtitles for it, but basically, I'm a huge Gundam nerd. Gundam is this giant, super giant robot anime from 1979. It's become this huge series. They got a bunch of toys and stuff. And they asked me what I like, and I said I like Gundam. And they were like, "You want to go see the giant moving robot Gundam?" And I was like, "Yeah." So I want to show you all that. Just because I have my portfolio with me and luck, I happen to be in the right place at the right time. Opportunity comes at the intersection of luck and preparedness. So I've been working really hard studying Japanese. Nobody's telling me to study Japanese. I'm mostly self-taught, but I'm working really hard. I don't just go there with the command of the art. I go there with the command of the language. I'm always pushing myself to learn more, and I always keep my portfolio with me. And then I got to be on TV. So I'll show you this to close out, and then we'll do questions. I don't know if audio is connected though. Yeah. Keep it with you. If you're an artist, keep your work with you. Take pictures. So yeah, that's basically that. So that was like this huge, amazing opportunity, but it was all because I happened to be in the right place at the right time, and they got interested because I showed them my portfolio, and I really committed to studying the language before I went there. So I was able to communicate with them, and they were actually able to do the show, and they took me to like go see like this giant robot of my favorite anime since I was a little kid. So yeah, just to close out before we do questions, I'm sort of interested in becoming a professional mangaka. I'm interested in sort of these Black and Japanese connections through popular media. I'm interested in creating actual pathways for other people to become mangaka. So I'm teaching, I actually taught the first studio-based manga course in the country this summer at U of I. So I'm still learning, but I figure I should teach what I learned. So please come to the free workshop October 8th, Saturday, from 1 to 3 p.m. That's my presentation. Thank you. Anybody have any questions? Who said that?
Where's the workshop?
It's here. It's right in another room where all the where the exhibition is. Saturday from October 8th at 1 p.m. Is it registration? No, just show up. Yes. What's that? Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, bring kids. Yeah, all ages. Yes. The benefit of teaching to a general audience? There's a lot of ways to answer that. It's nice to be able to share information in an accessible way because a lot of times the academy, this ivory tower, can be very separate. So it's in the community and there's a lot of resources, but a lot of people don't have access to it. I think because of the sort of language that we use a lot of jargon and a lot of academic language. And I think when you teach to a general audience, you can't use that. You have to teach in a way where everybody can understand. I think it's a good way to sort of not lose yourself in the academy also. I think you should always strive to be understood when you're doing these sort of presentations. And this is a form, it's popular media, right? So everybody should have access to it. Yeah. Any other questions? Yeah. Oh, thank you. I appreciate that. Thank you. Yeah. Absolutely. I don't know. I studied Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu. So there's also Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu, which was created by the Gracie family, this Brazilian family who adapted Japanese Jiu-Jitsu, and that ended up becoming probably the most practical martial art in the world right now. It sort of took the world by storm. That sort of global fusion, sort of combining Brazilian and Japanese martial arts. I'm not sure if I'm going to go to Brazil. I would love to. I got to learn Portuguese first. So I wouldn't go there without studying the language because I don't want to miss out on any opportunities, you know. I'm thinking France, though. I'm thinking France. The second big, so Japan is the biggest country for comics. France is number 2 and the United States is number 3. So I think if I pick up another language, it might be French. Yes. I'll be posting stuff. I'm not sure when we're gonna do it yet. So I have all the files now. I'm trying to line it up. So I'm still applying for grant money to bring my mentor here, Mr. Maekawa. But originally I was gonna do it in the fall because I already have all the work, but I want to sort of wait till he gets here. So I guess just wait to see when he's coming, and I'll be posting hopefully all the institutions that I'm a part of, like Art and Design, Humanities Research Institute, Center for Advanced Studies, EALC. Hopefully they'll be posting about that, and I'll be trying to make as big of a noise with the advertisements as possible. Hopefully in the spring, I'm thinking. Yes. No, because I didn't start making it for other people. I've been doing it since I was a kid, and it's just like my favorite thing to do. So I think fear and apprehension comes from us being worried about being accepted by other people. And some of that does happen, of course, like when you give talks and stuff like that. But I think when you really lean into the things that you like the most, you don't really have to worry about that. Because like if nobody reads my stuff, I like drawing it. So yeah, not really. Yes. Mom. Mm. Mhm. Yeah. Yeah.
But I still don't understand. I mean, you and I have discussed it before, and other people wanting to be curious.
Mm.
Why do so many of the anime characters?
Yeah, that's interesting. So that's I mean, this is just an opinion, but I think that's a larger conversation with the really tumultuous relationship with Japan and the United States and Western imperialism and colonialism. So in Japanese history, it's said that there are three sort of like most important events in all of Japanese history, events or periods. The first one is the Sengokajida, the Sengoku era, the Warring States period. When we think of samurai, when Japan was sort of all divided up and there was all this conflict and these battles. After that, after the Battle of Sengokajida in 1603, there was this long era of peace for over 200 years, but Japan became this isolated nation. There's something called Sakoku, where nobody's allowed to leave the country, nobody's allowed to come into the country, except they did a little bit of trading with Portugal. That was about it. That's where they got guns from and such. But basically, they were a very, very closed off nation. The second sort of biggest event time period in Japan is known as the Meiji era, which was the introduction to Western civilization. So Commodore Matthew Perry from the United States sailed over to Japan and said, hey, you want to trade? Japan said, no, we're closed. So he came back a year later with guns and said, hey, you want to trade? And forced Japan to open up. And that ushered in the new generation of all this Westernization and modernization in Japan. They sent a lot of the government officials and scholars to different Western nations. It was something called the Iwakura missions, so they can learn sort of how to be, in a way, an imperial nation. It changed Japan a lot. The third biggest thing in Japanese history was World War II, the bombs the United States dropped on Japan, and the subsequent reconstruction, which was instituted by the United States government. To this day, the Japanese Constitution was written by the United States government. And it's very small. I read it. You can read it. It's a small paragraph. It's basically like really subservient. We promise we won't do anything bad. So the two out of the three biggest sort of events in all of Japanese history are American violence and imperialism and influence. And there's something about that America is very popular in the United States. I think there's some kind of conclusions that we could draw there. America has a very strong influence on the United States. And I think that's why you see when people go Super Saiyan, when they power up, they get blonde hair and blue eyes. I can't say for sure, but I know whiteness is still very high, just like it is around the entire world, just like it is even within our own minds. So I think that's just something that exists there also. And I think it has a lot to do with those events of imperialism. Any other questions? Yeah.
So I'm actually asking this question on behalf of your mentor who introduced you, who I know loves you, and who I know you love. My question is, who is your dad?
So my mentor and my father have been arguing about who gets to claim ownership rights over me. I'm gonna let y'all argue about that. He's a fatherly figure of mine. It's my father. So, any other serious questions? Thank you for your time. Appreciate it.
Thank you, that was awesome. Thank you so much. I have two other important announcements. One is Kofi Bazzell-Smith, which is an important piece of all of this, is in the gallery in Stewart. It will be up through October 21st. So if you don't have time to see it today, please come back again, bring your friends. I know Kofi remains open to questions, through email and other ways, also the conversation with them and staff. And the other thing is that each of your spaces, there is an evaluation form, if you would take a minute to either fill it out in paper form and you get it received, or, to the QR code and do that. We really do look at them, and we take the evaluation seriously. And that's all. So, thank you so much for your.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Thank you. Thank you. What's that? How's it going?
Good. Our residents all were up here. And so we have the unit one LOC, which is what parts. LOC, we have